Let's get reaction now from two prominent voices on either side of the debate. Gina Miller was the lead claimant in the legal challenge against the government, which resulted in the Supreme Court ruling that Article 50 couldn't be triggered without a parliamentary vote. And Tim Martin is the founder and chairman of JD Wetherspoon. He campaigned ahead of the referendum for Britain to leave the EU. Gina, let me start with you. It's happening. Is your fight over?
Well, I'm pleased that the trigger's been done along the lines of constitutional requirements, but no, the battle's not over, because I will be upholding the judgment in my case, which is that Parliament has to be involved all the way through the process and exiting whenever it is that it's going to diminish or remove individuals' rights.
Even if that means that Parliament votes down any deal that Theresa May brings back?
Oh, no. If Parliament has a meaningful vote and actually does its job, there is no need for me to step up. If, however, it rubber stamps and doesn't have a proper debate, then that's a whole other issue.
But, I mean, arguably, if it's doing its job right and it sees a deal that Theresa May's come up with that it doesn't like, then it should vote it down.
Well, it should do. But if all they're offered is a vote between a bad deal and no deal, that's not a meaningful vote, and that actually would not satisfy the judgment in my case.
Is no deal better than a bad deal?
I don't think that's actually a choice. I think it's like you can shoot yourself in the foot with an arrow or a gun. I don't see how that's a choice in any way.
Tim, are you holding an arrow or a gun here?
Well, it's difficult when you get into the constitutional legal issues. I think the country voted to leave, and that's the key thing. I actually think we may well be better with no deal, because everyone seems to be frantic for a deal, and the great danger, anyone who runs a business knows this, or buys a house or a car, if you say you're desperate for a deal, you're likely not to get a good one. We have no deal with America, nor does the EU, India, China, the biggest economies in the world, and we do very well in our trade with those countries. So I would say perfectly happy to have no deal at all. I think that might be best for us.
And JD Wetherspoon could live with that if the UK was trading on WTO terms?
WTO terms, and we'll still go for a pint after work, yeah.
What about, I mean, on the migrant question, you're quite interested, because a lot of Leave campaigners wanted control of the borders. You're slightly unusual in that you employ lots of EU migrants and you want them to stay here post-Brexit.
I employ a relatively small number. It's around 3 or 4% of our workforce. Excellent workers, excellent people, done a great job. I think to have a successful economy, the population needs to rise over the years. There's a low birth rate in the UK, and I think we benefit from immigration in the same way as America has, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, but it has to be controlled by the UK government. The EU system has brought immigration into disrepute and frightened people, because people you haven't elected are allowing whole countries access.
Presumably you wouldn't disagree with a word of that, Gina, would you?
Well, I am astounded at the naivety that we can do trade deals when we haven't left. Actually, we have to negotiate our exit from the EU before we even look at negotiating a free trade deal with any other country, because our existing trade deals actually exist through our membership of the EU. To say that we could be talking to China, all these other countries, we actually have to leave first. Then we negotiate our free trade deals. And that negotiation, that exit, is not going to take 2 years. So the reality of the situation is we have to get one done before we can start the next leg of the race.
Too gloomy, far too gloomy. The EU's been unable to do trade deals with the biggest economies in the world. It's, broadly speaking, only done trade deals with smaller economies, because everyone can't agree. Even with Canada, quite a small country, 5% of the population of the EU, it was hell to arrange a deal. So don't get your hopes up over a deal. We don't need one. We've got a great big trade surplus with America. They drink our whiskey, they buy our cars, they buy lots of other stuff. Don't get too fixated on a trade deal.
And yet it was very interesting today that in Theresa May's letter, she's clearly indicating that she's hoping for more than just WTO terms.
Well, probably if you could snap your fingers and have a free trade deal with the rest of the world, it might be good, but that's what the World Trade Organization is designed to cover. And we can scrap all tariffs if we want to anyway, which is what a lot of the economists for Brexit say. Prices will go down at 7 or 8%. Government tax will probably go up. We'll all be better off. Fantastic. Just scrap the tariffs unilaterally.
I mean, I love the optimism that has no basis in reality, because the legal requirements, I'm sorry, but there are requirements of how you do that. If not, why did we join? Why are we going through this process? Why actually, as you said, you could have just left the day after. Actually, as the law ascertained in my case, the government couldn't just do that on its own. You can't leave. There is a process to leaving, and there's a process to joining the WTO.
I'm talking about after we've left.
Yes, but how long is that going to take?
Well, we leave in 2 years.
If you think we will, then you're being very optimistic, because I don't think it'll be 2 years.
But I mean, Gina, you mentioned the process there. I mean, Michel Barnier is very clear. Before we even start discussing any future relationship between the EU and the UK, we've got to sort out a bill for leaving. I mean, that's where process really gets the better of common sense, doesn't it?
Well, look, in any divorce, it comes down to haggling about money. And that's actually what we're going to end up with, haggling about money before any serious negotiations start. And the EU says, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. That's the old EU saying, and I can see that that's what they're going to stick to. But however, I hope there isn't a sort of tit for tat, and there is a completely different mood as we go forward from both sides.
Well, do you think the mood is going to change now that Article 50 has been triggered? Is the relationship between leavers and remainers going to alter?
I think we have to stop going on about those terms. We're not actually leavers or remainers. You introduced us, we're actually all leavers now, and that's the point. It's about getting rid of the emotion and looking at how we go forward in this process, because the bottom line has got to be what is best for Britain. That is the only thing that matters now.
You go along with that, Tim?
What is best for Britain, and we trade with 93% of the world, mostly without trading agreements. I think we'll do very well.
All right, very, very briefly, Tim, you're from Northern Ireland. Do you think we're going to get a hard border?
No, I don't think we will. I think common sense will prevail, and we'll be able to work something out. The Irish are famous for being able to work out consensual deals.
Very good. Tim Martin, Gina Miller, thanks both.